Hello and welcome. If you're here, it means you're ready to take a bold step in your English learning journey. Many people spend years studying grammar rules, memorizing vocabulary lists, and endlessly reviewing exercises, yet they struggle to speak confidently in real situations. This story is about a different approach, stopping endless learning and starting to actively use English in everyday life. In this story, you'll follow Mia, a determined learner who discovered that the key to fluency isn't just knowing English, it's using it. Mia realized that practical application, not constant studying, accelerates learning and builds confidence. She learned that mistakes are valuable lessons, that real conversations are more effective than textbooks, and that immersing oneself in English communication is the fastest way to internalize the language. Throughout this story, you'll see how Mia gradually shifts from passive learning to active usage. She experiments with speaking in daily situations, engages with media and native speakers, and overcomes fear and hesitation. You'll learn strategies for using English naturally, including starting conversations, thinking in English, leveraging mistakes as learning opportunities, and integrating language use into daily routines. By the end of the story, you'll understand that fluency is less about perfect knowledge and more about practice, interaction, and consistent usage. Mia's journey demonstrates how taking action, embracing imperfection, and using English actively can transform a learner into a confident communicator. This story is both practical and inspiring. It's designed to show how stepping out of the learning mode and into the using mode allows English to become a living, natural part of your everyday life. Welcome to a journey where speaking, thinking, and interacting in English becomes your reality. After years of studying English, Mia realized she had a lot of knowledge, but very little practical experience. She could conjugate verbs perfectly and understand complex grammar, yet when it came to speaking with real people, she froze. The first step toward fluency, she understood, was not more studying, it was starting to speak, despite fear and uncertainty. Mia decided to set small, manageable goals. Her first challenge was ordering coffee at a local cafe entirely in English. She practiced the sentences in front of a mirror, repeating them until they sounded natural. When the moment came, her heart raced, but she took a deep breath and placed her order. The barista smiled and responded in kind, and the exchange was brief but empowering. Mia realized that the conversation wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was more valuable than any textbook exercise. Encouraged by this small victory, Mia expanded her practice to daily interactions. She greeted neighbors, asked questions in stores, and even made small talk with colleagues, all in English. She noticed a powerful shift. Each time she used English in a real context, her brain adapted, retrieving words and phrases more quickly. Mistakes became lessons, not failures, and she began to see learning and using English as a dynamic cycle. Mia also confronted her fear of judgment. She understood that most people were patient and supportive, and that hesitations or errors were natural for learners. By reframing mistakes as opportunities to learn and communicate, she gradually reduced anxiety and built confidence. Speaking became less about perfection and more about connection, which in turn made her English more fluid and natural. Another key realization was that active use of English reinforced what she had learned. Grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, which had previously been abstract knowledge, suddenly became practical tools. Each conversation, no matter how simple, helped solidify mental patterns, making future speech smoother. Mia also began keeping a small notebook of phrases, words, and expressions she used successfully in real conversations. This personalized reference became a bridge between theory and practice, reminding her that using English was not only possible but enjoyable and effective. By the end of this stage, Mia's mindset shifted dramatically. She understood that fear was a natural barrier, but action was the key to overcoming it. Speaking English, even imperfectly, accelerated her learning far more than passive study ever could. She had taken the critical first step from a learner to an active user of English, setting the stage for rapid improvement and genuine fluency. With the first step behind her, Mia realized that consistent exposure to English was crucial for progress. She decided to immerse herself in English in ways that went beyond formal study, transforming her daily life into a living classroom. The goal was to make English a natural part of her environment, so thinking and speaking it became effortless. Mia began by integrating English media into her routine. She watched TV shows, movies, and YouTube videos without subtitles, focusing on understanding the flow of conversations rather than every single word. She paused occasionally to repeat phrases aloud, mimicking pronunciation, intonation, and natural rhythm. Podcasts became part of her commute, helping her absorb everyday vocabulary, idiomatic expressions, and native speech patterns. Beyond media, Mia adjusted her surroundings. She labeled objects around her apartment in English. Refrigerator, microwave, bookshelf, so that even routine actions prompted English thoughts. She set her phone, computer, and apps to English, forcing herself to navigate technology in the target language. This subtle but constant exposure reinforced her vocabulary and encouraged her brain to process information directly in English. Mia also started thinking in English throughout the day. While making breakfast, she narrated the steps mentally. "I'm boiling water for tea. Now I'll slice the bread." This internal dialogue helped her bypass translation from her native language and trained her mind to frame ideas directly in English. She found that the more she practiced thinking in English, the easier speaking became. Another strategy was surrounding herself with English-speaking communities online. Mia joined social media groups, forums, and language exchange platforms where she could read posts, comment, and engage in conversations. Participating actively helped her apply what she had learned in real contexts, while receiving feedback from native speakers allowed her to refine phrasing and comprehension. Mia also created challenges for herself, such as describing her day in English in a journal, writing emails to imaginary friends, or explaining concepts she was passionate about. These exercises connected language to her personal experiences, making English practical and meaningful rather than abstract. Importantly, Mia embraced mistakes as part of immersion. Misunderstandings, mispronunciations, or incorrect word choices were no longer obstacles. They were opportunities to learn and improve. Each real-life interaction, whether successful or flawed, contributed to her growing confidence and fluency. By integrating English into media, technology, thought, and social interaction, Mia transformed her environment into a continuous learning ecosystem. The language was no longer confined to textbooks or lessons. It became a natural tool for thinking, expressing, and connecting. This immersion laid the foundation for rapid improvement, preparing her to move beyond passive exposure and into active, confident communication. After immersing herself in English, Mia realized that the next step was to practice spontaneous speech, speaking without pre-planning or translating from her native language. She understood that true fluency required her brain to process thoughts directly in English and respond in real time, rather than rehearsing sentences or relying on memorized phrases. Mia began by talking to herself throughout the day. She narrated activities aloud, described what she saw while walking outside, and expressed opinions on topics she encountered in books, videos, or news articles. Instead of thinking, "How do I say this in English?" she forced herself to frame every idea in English immediately. For example, instead of translating, "I feel excited about the weekend," she simply said aloud, "I'm excited for the weekend," and experimented with alternatives like, "I can't wait for the weekend," or, "The weekend is going to be fun." To simulate real conversations, Mia practiced with friends and language partners in short, unstructured chats. She avoided scripts and focused on reacting naturally. If she didn't know a word, she paraphrased or explained the idea using simpler language. This flexibility trained her mind to think dynamically, finding solutions in English rather than stalling for the perfect term. Mia also embraced improvisation exercises. She imagined scenarios, ordering at a restaurant, giving directions, or responding to a casual question, and spoke aloud without prior preparation. These exercises, repeated daily, help reduce hesitation and anxiety. Over time, forming sentences became more automatic, and she no longer felt the need to pause to translate. Internal dialogue became a powerful tool. Mia intentionally replaced her thoughts in her native language with English. While planning the day, she thought, "I need to finish the report by 3 p.m." Or, "I'll call Sarah after lunch." This mental habit created direct English thought patterns, so when speaking aloud, sentences flowed naturally without conscious effort. Mia also used audio recording for self-feedback. She spoke about topics spontaneously and listened to the recordings, noting pronunciation issues, awkward phrasing, or gaps in vocabulary. She then practiced those sentences again, refining them until they sounded natural. This iterative process reinforced internalization and built confidence in using English on the spot. By practicing spontaneous speech and thinking directly in English, Mia noticed a major breakthrough. Hesitations decreased, sentences formed quickly, and her mind automatically retrieved words and expressions. Mistakes no longer intimidated her, they were signs of growth, leading to more flexible and creative use of language. This stage marked a turning point. English was no longer a subject she studied. It was a tool she actively used to communicate, think, and engage with the world. By training herself to speak spontaneously and think in English, Mia moved closer to fluent, natural communication, bridging the gap between knowledge and real-life application. With spontaneous speech becoming more natural, Mia realized that her vocabulary needed to grow in a practical, usable way. Instead of memorizing long lists of words from textbooks, she focused on acquiring vocabulary directly through real-life experiences, media, and conversations. This approach allowed her to think and speak in English more fluidly. Mia started by observing words in context. While watching movies, listening to podcasts, or reading articles, she noted how words were used naturally. For example, instead of just learning the word astonished, she paid attention to sentences like, "She was astonished by the news," or, "I couldn't help but be astonished at the view." Seeing words in context helped her understand nuances, tone, and emotion, and made it easier to apply them spontaneously. She also grouped words by topics and patterns. Verbs related to emotions like delighted, frustrated, or overwhelmed were practiced together. Mia would imagine scenarios where she could use these words. "I'm delighted with my results," or "He seemed frustrated by the traffic." This not only expanded her vocabulary but also trained her brain to choose the most appropriate word naturally in conversation. Collocations and idiomatic expressions became a focus as well. Phrases like, "make a decision, catch someone's attention," or "spill the beans," appeared frequently in her media consumption. Mia practiced using these expressions in context, both in mental exercises and actual conversations. Over time, these combinations felt automatic, making her speech sound more native-like. Mia also leveraged repetition and review. New words and expressions were revisited through journaling, speaking aloud, and daily conversations. She created a personal, active vocabulary notebook where she recorded words she had successfully used in real-life situations. Reviewing this notebook regularly reinforced her memory and helped integrate these words into her internal thought process. Another key strategy was paraphrasing. For each new word or expression, Mia practiced forming multiple sentences expressing similar ideas. After learning, "fascinated," she would say, "I'm fascinated by astronomy, she seemed fascinated by the story," and "he looked fascinated when he saw the painting." Paraphrasing strengthened her ability to express ideas flexibly and naturally. Mia also integrated new vocabulary into her mental visualization exercises. While imagining conversations or daily routines, she intentionally inserted newly learned words. Thinking in context reinforced her ability to retrieve and use words spontaneously, making them part of her instinctive English thought patterns. Through practical vocabulary expansion, Mia discovered that learning words in isolation was far less effective than using them actively. By observing, practicing, and integrating words into real-life situations, she built a rich mental library that supported fluent, confident communication. By the end of this stage, Mia's vocabulary was not just larger, it was active, flexible, and ready for real-world usage. Words and expressions flowed naturally in her thoughts and speech, enabling her to communicate with nuance, precision, and confidence. Having built practical vocabulary and spontaneous speech skills, Mia was ready to fully engage in real conversations. She understood that reading, listening, and internal practice were valuable, but fluency required actual interaction. The key was to speak with confidence, embrace mistakes, and treat every conversation as a learning opportunity. Mia started small. She joined local language exchange groups and participated in short conversations with native speakers online. Initially, she felt nervous, fearing errors or awkward phrasing. But she reminded herself that using English was more important than speaking perfectly. Even imperfect sentences allowed her brain to practice retrieval, adaptation, and real-time communication. To build confidence, Mia used preparation combined with flexibility. Before conversations, she reviewed potential topics, phrases, and expressions, but she didn't memorize full scripts. She focused on key vocabulary and sentence structures that could be adapted spontaneously. During interactions, she relied on these tools while thinking in English, allowing her responses to flow naturally. Mia also practiced active listening. Instead of planning what to say next while someone was talking, she focused fully on understanding meaning, tone, and implied nuances. This skill helped her respond appropriately and maintain a natural conversational rhythm. She noticed that understanding native speech in context became easier as she practiced speaking herself. Role-playing remained an important technique. Mia simulated conversations in various scenarios, ordering at a restaurant, discussing a news article, or sharing a personal story. By switching roles, she experienced both the speaker's and listener's perspectives. This helped her anticipate responses, improve comprehension, and think dynamically during real interactions. She learned to handle unknown words and unexpected questions gracefully. When encountering unfamiliar vocabulary, Mia paraphrased, asked for clarification, or explained her meaning differently. These strategies allowed her to maintain conversation flow and reduce the fear of making mistakes. Mistakes became opportunities for learning rather than obstacles. Over time, Mia noticed a significant shift. Conversations became more fluid, hesitation decreased, and she could discuss complex topics with nuance and clarity. Confidence grew as she realized that using English actively was the fastest way to internalize language patterns, idiomatic expressions, and cultural norms. Mia also began giving and receiving feedback. She asked conversation partners to correct subtle mistakes and shared her reflections after interactions. This continuous cycle of practice, reflection, and adjustment accelerated her fluency and strengthened her ability to think in English during real-life communication. By the end of this stage, Mia's confidence in conversations had skyrocketed. Speaking English was no longer intimidating. It was an enjoyable, interactive process that allowed her to express ideas, connect with others, and continue learning naturally. Engaging actively in real conversations became a cornerstone of her journey from learner to fluent user of English. Mia realized that conversations alone, while invaluable, weren't enough to accelerate her English fluency to the next level. She needed to integrate English into all aspects of her life, through media, daily activities, and observation of how language is used naturally. This stage was about using every experience as a learning opportunity. She began by turning movies, TV shows, and podcasts into active learning tools. Instead of passively watching, Mia paused to repeat phrases aloud, imitate intonation, and note how expressions were used in context. She experimented by rephrasing sentences and using similar expressions in her conversations, which reinforced her ability to think and speak naturally. Mia also paid attention to cultural nuances and informal language. While reading news articles or blogs, she noted idiomatic expressions, humor, and conversational connectors like, "By the way, come to think of it," or, "at the end of the day." She practiced using these in her own speech, which made her English sound more authentic and native-like. Daily experiences became opportunities to practice as well. When going shopping, she narrated interactions mentally. "I'm asking the cashier if they have this in stock," or, "I'll check the price of this item." She also wrote short notes or reflections in English about her day, describing events, feelings, or observations. These exercises strengthened her mental patterns and improved the ease of recalling vocabulary. Mia engaged in active observation of native speakers in public spaces. Listening to conversations in cafes, on the bus, or in parks helped her understand natural pacing, stress, and rhythm. She tried to mimic expressions mentally and noticed the subtle ways tone and body language conveyed meaning. She also made media interactive. When watching a film, Mia paused to predict what characters would say next, summarize scenes aloud, or explain dialogue in her own words. These strategies connected comprehension with production, ensuring that she not only understood English but could actively use it in similar contexts. Mia realized that learning from everyday life was more effective than traditional study because it was immediate, practical, and engaging. Every situation, whether listening to a friend, ordering food, or watching a show, provided real-time feedback, reinforced vocabulary, and strengthened her ability to think in English. By the end of this stage, Mia had fully embraced using English in her environment. Media, daily life, and observation became constant companions in her learning journey. English was no longer confined to study sessions. It was alive, integrated, and actively shaping her thoughts and communication. As Mia progressed, she encountered inevitable challenges. Sometimes conversations didn't go as planned, pronunciation errors led to misunderstandings, or she struggled to recall a word in the moment. She realized that consistent practice and resilience were key to sustaining her growth and continuing to use English effectively. Mia developed strategies to overcome these obstacles. First, she reframed mistakes as learning opportunities rather than failures. Every error became a chance to improve, refine vocabulary, and adjust pronunciation. For example, mispronouncing comfortable in a conversation led her to practice it repeatedly in different contexts until it felt natural. Each small correction built her confidence and reinforced her mental patterns. Consistency became another focus. Mia set aside dedicated daily time for English use, speaking, listening, and writing, even if only for a few minutes. She paired this with real-life application, like engaging in short conversations with colleagues, participating in online discussions, or narrating daily routines aloud. This combination of structured and spontaneous practice created a balanced, sustainable approach. Mia also used accountability methods. She joined language groups, exchanged messages with partners, and shared her progress with friends. Having a network of support helped her stay motivated and provided constructive feedback, which reinforced her learning through social engagement. To strengthen her memory, Mia applied spaced repetition techniques for vocabulary and phrases she encountered during practice. She revisited tricky expressions and idioms periodically, ensuring they became part of her active vocabulary and could be recalled instantly in conversation. Mia tackled difficult situations proactively. When facing a fast-paced conversation or unfamiliar topic, she relied on paraphrasing, asking clarifying questions, or using simpler language to maintain the flow. She discovered that adaptability was as important as knowledge, and being flexible allowed her to navigate any situation without hesitation. Mental resilience became a habit. Mia reminded herself that occasional frustration, pauses, or misunderstandings were normal and part of the learning process. By staying persistent, she maintained a positive mindset, viewing challenges as steps toward mastery rather than setbacks. By the end of this stage, Mia had established a routine and mindset that ensured continuous improvement. She had learned that overcoming obstacles, maintaining consistency, and practicing resilience were as important as vocabulary, grammar, or pronunciation. These habits allowed her to confidently use English every day, gradually turning practice into instinctive ability. With a strong foundation and growing confidence, Mia began extending her English usage beyond personal practice into social and professional environments. She understood that true fluency required applying language in diverse, real-world contexts where communication mattered. Socially, Mia joined clubs, attended meetups, and participated in online communities where English was the primary language. These interactions exposed her to different accents, colloquial expressions, and cultural references, helping her adapt naturally. She practiced initiating conversations, telling stories, and responding to humor, all skills that demanded spontaneous thinking in English. Social engagement also provided instant feedback, allowing her to notice what phrases worked, which expressions sounded natural, and where she could improve. Professionally, Mia volunteered to give presentations, participate in meetings, and collaborate with English-speaking colleagues. She prepared key points in advance but spoke freely, relying on her vocabulary and mental English patterns. Over time, she noticed that her ability to articulate complex ideas improved, and she could handle unexpected questions or discussions without hesitation. Her colleagues appreciated her clarity and fluency, which boosted her professional confidence. Mia also started mentoring other English learners, explaining concepts, sharing strategies, and practicing conversation with them. Teaching reinforced her own skills. Articulating ideas in English required her to think carefully, choose precise words, and communicate clearly. This reciprocal learning strengthened her mental patterns and expanded her ability to express nuanced ideas. Travel became another arena for practice. Visiting English-speaking cities, Mia engaged with locals in daily life, from ordering meals to asking for directions and participating in casual conversations. Immersing herself fully in these environments accelerated her thinking in English, reduced translation delays, and reinforced culturally appropriate language use. Throughout this stage, Mia observed that fluency wasn't just about speaking correctly. It was about thinking flexibly, adapting to context, and maintaining confidence. She realized that engaging socially and professionally created real stakes for her communication, making language usage meaningful and memorable. By the end of this stage, Mia had transformed English from a subject of study into a versatile, practical tool. She could converse with ease, adapt to different environments, and participate fully in social and professional contexts. Her journey illustrated that using English actively in real life is the ultimate path to mastery, bridging the gap between knowledge and true fluency. As Mia reflected on her journey, she realized that the transformation was profound. What began as a focus on endless studying had evolved into a lifestyle of active English use, immersive experiences, and confident communication. By prioritizing action over perfection, she had moved from a learner dependent on textbooks to a fluent user capable of thinking and expressing herself naturally in English. Mia's key insight was that fluency comes from using the language consistently, not merely studying it. Every conversation, media interaction, daily narration, and professional engagement contributed to her mental patterns, vocabulary, and instinctive thinking. By integrating English into daily life, she created a feedback loop where practical use reinforced learning, and learning enhanced practical use. Mistakes, once feared, became valuable tools for improvement. Mispronunciations, hesitations, or misunderstandings were no longer setbacks but lessons guiding her toward more precise and natural communication. Mia learned that resilience and reflection are as essential as knowledge, and embracing imperfection is part of mastering a language. Consistency and immersion proved crucial. Daily practice, active engagement, and real-world application kept her skills sharp and allowed her to internalize English as a living, intuitive system. Mental visualization, spontaneous speech, and interaction with native speakers accelerated her ability to think in English directly, reducing reliance on translation. By extending English into social and professional life, Mia experienced the full benefits of her efforts. She could navigate complex conversations, express nuanced ideas, and engage confidently in diverse contexts. English was no longer a subject she studied. It was a tool for connection, creativity, and problem-solving. The journey taught her that living English is a mindset. It requires curiosity, courage, and action, using language boldly, embracing mistakes, and continuously engaging with authentic communication. Thinking in English became instinctive, allowing Mia to participate fully in both personal and professional interactions without hesitation. In conclusion, Mia's story demonstrates a powerful lesson for all learners. Stop focusing solely on studying and start using English actively. Fluency is built not by perfection, but by consistent practice, real-world application, and a willingness to engage. By living English every day, thinking in English, and embracing the process, anyone can achieve confident, natural, and lasting mastery of the language.